Yo, welcome to the channel. In this video today, we're going to be going over the Magicka Necromancer for STONETHORN. Necromancer is still a very strong class for this patch, and I still have a lot of fun with one. So, let's go ahead and dive right into it. Maximum Magicka is 40k. Maximum health is 17.1. Magic recovery is 1.2k unbuffed. Spell damage is 2.1k unbuffed. And spell crit we're setting right there at 49.9%. So, works for us. So, I'm a Briton. Keep that in mind. You might have to adjust your points because you do want to be around 16.5k health to 17.5. You don't really want to go over. I have 60 points into Magicka and just 4 points into health. So the boot I'm running is the Shadow for that extra crit damage, and it pairs really well with the rest of the sets that I'm running. So champion points: 26 into Warlord, 29 into Sprinter, 11 into Bashing Focus, 64 Arcanist, 64 Tenacity, 34 Shadow Ward, 41 Tumbling. Now, in this tree, in the green tree, Arcanist and Tenacity are your main two. Arcanist first for more sustain, followed by Tenacity. After that, you have options. You could either reduce the cost of your break free and sprint, or even your bash. You know, if you end up having to bash a lot for your group, or the reduce the cost of block and roll dodge, or sneak if you sneak around a lot. Now, if you do this tree, the main reason why you would do this one is for Treasure Hunter. Treasure Hunter is a great passive to have, so you want at least 75 points here because it gives it, the quality of items you find in treasure chests or just increases those items. So that includes dungeons, trials, overland, lock boxes, anything. If it's a chest, if it's a lock, and you pick it, whatever you get out of it, this has a better chance of getting. I think even thieves' treasure troves. I think this affects those too. Not 100% sure there. I have heard it. I've heard it does. I've heard it doesn't. Not quite sure. But treasure hunter is always good to have just in general. So after you get these leveled up or get these ranked up to with your champion points, you can either focus on break free and sprint or focus on getting that treasure hunter so you can get those better items. So that's up to you. Now, in the red tree, we have 40 in Ironclad, 31 Spell Shield, 31 Light Armor Focus, 64 Hardy, 64 Elemental Defender, 27 Quick Recovery, 13 Bastion. Now, we don't necessarily use a shield on this build from the start, but there are sometimes you do need a shield there. Sometimes it comes in handy. So we have a few points here just to increase the strength of the shield when we do need one. So, when it comes to the red tree, Hardy, Elemental Defender are your main two. You're going to want to focus on them first. And then Ironclad. Once you have about 28, at least 28 points into Ironclad here, you can focus on making your characters a little beefier, a little tankier with light armor and spell shield focus, or increase your healing received or the effectiveness of your shields if you find yourself using one. Either way, one of those will work, but it's entirely up to you. But your main two focus is Hardy and Elemental Defender here. Now, in the blue tree, we have 61 Elfborn, 64 Elemental Expert, 19 Spell Erosion, 19 Staff Expert, 15 Master at Arms, and 51 Thermomage. Now, in this tree, Elfborn and Elemental Expert are your main two. These are the two you're really going to focus on first, and you're going to get them ranked up. After that, Master at Arms and Thermomage are both pretty important because we do have a lot of direct damage attacks, and we do have dots, some very powerful dots as well. So you can really focus on either one of those. You can't go wrong with either one. And then after that, Staff Expert and Spell Erosion. Spell Erosion to increase your spell pin, and Staff Expert just to increase the damage of your light and heavy attacks. So that is pretty much the tree. Now on to the sets. I want to go over the monster set first. This is a monster set that I absolutely love. I know it doesn't get used a whole lot, but I love this set. And it comes from Unhallowed Grave on Vet. Unhallowed Grave on Vet is not as complicated as it sounds. I mean, Fireboss can be a little complicated, but as long as you have communication amongst your team members, you shouldn't have any issues clearing her. It's the one where the little fire will come up around the ground, the ring will come, and you just have to communicate where that circle is so the tank can take her to it. quickly enough to keep the fires from coming up. Outside of that, the rest of the fights are pretty straightforward, pretty simple. This is not hard to complete at all. And what this does, uh, it gives us spell damage on the one piece, and then when dealing damage with a light attack, puts a bone stack on your enemy for 5 seconds. You can apply only one stack every 1 second. If 5 stacks on a dodgeable skeletal hand attacks your enemy after 1 second, knocking them into the air and stunning them for 3 seconds, or dealing 20.1k magic damage if they cannot be stunned. That has reached 5 stacks cannot gain bone stacks for 3 seconds. An enemy that has reached 5 stacks cannot gain bone stacks for 3 seconds. It hits hard. It's not necessarily overpowered, but it does tend to go off twice. I would say at least twice every 2 rotations. So you're going to get one every rotation. So it works out nice. Now, we're running a Divine's Heavy Helmet with Max Magicka and a Medium Divine Shoulders with Max Magicka. Now, if you don't want to go through Unhallowed Grave, or you can't, there are other options. You have Grofdar. Grofdar here adds Max Magicka. When you deal damage, create a ring around you. You have a 10% chance to create a ring of fire around you that deals 2.5k flame damage to all enemies within 8 meters. Personally, I'm not that close with the Necro. You know, so Grofdar doesn't really do me that much good, but if you stay real close, Grofdar can come in handy for you. Alambris is a good one as well. Gives you Max Magicka when you do Flame or Shock. We do both. You have a 33% chance to summon a meteor shower of that damage type that deals 2.8k damage to all enemies within 4 meters every 1 second for 5 seconds. This effect can occur once every 8 seconds. This is a great set as well. Problem is that if the enemy moves a lot, then the Alambris is not going to be as beneficiary to you. So it's always good to have multiple monster sets that you can change in and out, because Alambris is strong, but if they are moving, then they're just going to move out of your thing. So it's a wasted damage set. You have Slime Crawl here, which will give you Spell Crit and just give you Minor Berserk at all times, increasing your damage down by 8%. If the healer's not using Combat Prayer, this is a good monster set to have as well. And then Valkynscoria gives you Spell Pin, and when you deal damage with a damage over time effect, you have an 8% chance to summon a meteor that deals 12.5k flame damage to the target and 4.6k flame damage to all other enemies within 5 meters. This effect can occur once every 5 seconds. Both of these, all these sets are really nice. And then of course you have Zons. When you damage it gives you Spell Crit. When you damage a nearby enemy with a light or heavy attack, you have a 33% chance to create a beam of fire that will connect you to your enemy. The beam deals 3k flame damage every 1 second to your enemy for 6 seconds. Every second the damage increases by 100%. The beam is broken if the enemy moves 8 meters away from you. The effect can occur every 18 seconds. So it's basically going to have a 6-second uptime and a 12-second downtime, more or less. And then the best monster set right now for Magic users is Maw the Infernal. It gives us Max Magicka. When you deal damage to a light or heavy attack, you have a 33% chance to summon a fire-breathing Daedroth for 15 seconds. Daedroth's attacks deal 5.3k flame damage and alternate between Fire Breath, Fire Jaws, and Jagged Claw, which alternate once every 2 seconds. Daedroth can only be summoned once every 15 seconds. This is a really strong set. This patch is probably best on almost all Magic classes. But sometimes you don't want to run the same thing on everything. But all these monster sets are viable on the majority of Magic classes. You know, I like this one on my Necro most, but there are times where I do switch it out for Valkynscoria or Alambris. You know, it just depends, or even Slime Crawl. I've switched it out for Slime Crawl once or twice. It just depends on what I'm doing. So it's always good to have multiple sets. Keep that in mind. So, but yeah, Grofdar, Vaults of Madness, Alambris, Crypto Hearts 1, Unhallowed Grave, uh, Slime Crawl is Wayrest 1, Valkynscoria City of Ash 2, Zaun's Skullcaller Peak, and Maw the Infernal is Banished Cells 2. Any of those sets, you know, of course, Crypto Hearts 1, Vaults of Madness, Wayrest 1, and Banished Cells 2 are probably your easiest ones. You know, Unhallowed Grave is really easy, but I don't think it's as easy as those. So, and of course, City of Ash 2 is a pain, and so is Skullcaller to get through on vet. So, any of those sets work for you. Now, the first Magic set that we're running is Succession. Elemental Succession. This comes from Maelstrom Arena. You can farm this on normal if you want to get the body pieces. So, we're running a Just Divines, a Sash Divines, and then we're running Jewelry, all Arcane, all with spell damage. Now, Jewelry, if you run this on Maelstrom and you do it on normal, Jewelry is going to come in blue. But, which is fine with you. It's fine. It's not a big deal. But you have to be careful with the jewelry from Maelstrom Arena because it will not always be arcane. Sometimes you can get a healthy necklace. You can get a robust one. So you may not always get arcane if you want to just roll with the blue jewelry. That is fine. Um, or if you'd like to switch it out with something, run it all on the body and then switch the other set out with something else, that's up to you too. So what this does, it gives us max Magicka, spell damage, max Magicka, and whenever you deal flame, shock, or frost damage, you gain 475 spell damage for that elemental for 4 seconds. Each effect can occur once every 4 seconds, and multiple effects can be active at once. This works extremely well with our spammable because we are hitting with all three. It is nice. And plus, it synergizes really well with the next set, which is Catalyst, the Elemental Catalyst. So there's Elemental Succession and Elemental Catalyst. I had to try both these together just because the names were so similar. We're running a Divine Boots. We're running Infused Legs with Max Magicka. Of course, you do Divines is better, but Infused is not a bad trade either. We have Divine Gloves, and then we have a Precise Inferno Staff with a Absorb Magicka enchant. You want Precise because if you don't have Precise, then you're going to have to run the Thief Mundus Zone to even come close, to even get to 50% crit. So, with Precise, we're right there at it. You know, we're 49.9, so that's enough that we can run the Shadow with no repercussions, no problems. And what this set does, Catalyst comes from the new dungeon, Stone Guardian. It is a very interesting set. I think it was definitely made for the Necromancer. It gives us max Magicka, spell crit, max Magicka, and whenever you deal flame, shock, or frost damage, you apply a stack of flame, shock, or frost weakness to the enemy for 3 seconds. Each stack of an elemental weakness increases their critical damage taken by 3%, and the enemy can only have 1 stack of each element weakness at a time. Now, I've heard debates. I don't know if that extra 3% for each element, so it would be 9%. I don't know if that increases their critical damage taken by everybody in your group or just you. You know, so I've heard some people say it does. I've heard some people say it don't. I am not sure, and so I can't tell you for sure. But looking at it, it doesn't say it does, and it doesn't say it doesn't. Each stack of elemental weakness increases their critical damage taken by 3%. It doesn't say that that's just from you. It doesn't say that that is with the group. So I understand the frustration and the confusion with it. So maybe down the road, maybe a dev or something can clarify it. But right now, even if it's just us, that is still an extra 9% critical damage. On top of the boon that is, I think mine's 16%, but if you had all your pieces in Divines, it would be an extra 17% critical damage. So right now with mine being 16 and 9, that's an extra 24% crit damage. So it's definitely still worth running regardless. So, and then on our back bar we have a Maelstrom Inferno Staff infused with a weapon damage enchant. Maelstrom Marina weapons now drop on normal, so go and get in there while you're farming for Elemental Succession, which even if you're not, even if you're only going to use one of these sets, Succession is really good to have for a Necromancer. It just synergizes really well because you have flame, frost, and shock damage in your kit. No matter what abilities you use, you will always have flame, shock, or frost damage. So Succession is really good on a Necro in general. Now, when it comes to setups, you can run Mother Sorrow with Elemental Catalyst. You can run Mother Sorrow with Jerkin of Succession and still do really well if you're wanting that more crit. Or Medusa with the, you might have to make a few modifications, but in the end, Medusa gives you a ton of crit and it gives you minor force at all times, so it could free up a bar on your an ability on your back bar. But I've been having a lot of fun with this. I really love this new set, Elemental Catalyst. Uh, but Elemental Succession is so good on a Necro as well. I just had to try them both out, and I can't really see myself using any other options, any other setups right now on the Necro other than this one. That's just me personally. Now the monster sets do get changed out quite a bit depending on what I'm doing, but I still like this one being my base set throughout most of my dungeons and things like that. So usually the monster set gets changed depending on the trial that I'm doing. So just like just in case. So skills, very simple. Our main spammable is Crushing Shock. Focus all element energies with your staff and blast an enemy for 2.7k flame damage, frost damage, and shock damage. All 2.7k. Enemies hit while casting are interrupted, set off balance, and stunned for 3 seconds. This comes in handy when you're doing Ice Reach or just bosses in general that you got to interrupt. Kind of like if you're going through Skullbreaker, the very first two bosses, the ogres, the one in the center has to be bashed in order to stop him from summoning all them skeevers. This comes in handy right there. So that's where a lot of people have trouble with, is that very first boss. If you get past that first boss, the rest of the bosses should be kind of a breeze. So now you don't have to use this one as your main spammable if you don't want to. I like it because it synergizes with the rest of the set with Succession and Catalyst. Now, if you want to go with another spammable, you can go with Flame Skull. I tried it out for a while. It works pretty good, but with the sets giving extra damage and extra crit to all the abilities, Crushing Shock just works pretty well for me. I like it. So, you may prefer Venom Skull. Go for it. Or not Venom Skull, but Flame Skull. And it's Ricochet Skull. It's kind of weird. So Ricochet Skull is pretty nice too, but it is just flame damage. So I think it synergizes really well with Crushing Shock or Force Pulse if you want to go with Force Pulse. If you don't care about the interrupt, Force Pulse is good as well. So now, Stalking Blast Bones is one of our main abilities. Probably the main ability. Summon a flaming skeleton from the ground after 2.5 seconds. The skeleton runs after the target and explodes when it gets close to them, dealing 13.5k flame damage to all enemies nearby. Every second the skeleton spins chasing its target increases the damage of the explosion by 10% up to a maximum of 50% more damage. This is kind of why I don't hang close to the enemy. Because I want to be, at least, I'm back enough to hit my abilities, but at the same time, it's enough to give my skeleton at least 1 or 2 seconds to get there. Sometimes he goes relatively slow, sometimes he just zooms, and sometimes he does circles. Until he explodes. So there is no telling how the Stalking Blast Bones will do, but it's one of those abilities that you want to try to keep up as much as possible. So it's kind of like the shocks on the Warden. This is the ability that you want to keep going at all times. So then Skeletal Arcanist. Unearth the Skeletal Mage from the dirt to fight by your side for 16 seconds. The mage attacks the closest enemy every 2 seconds, dealing 3.2k shock damage to them and all other enemies nearby. Creates corpse on death. Pretty straightforward. Also, with this ability here, having it out, let's see. While the Grave Lord ability is active, your spell and physical penetration are increased. Right here. Let's see. Maybe I think it's Live and Death. Here it is. While you have a Blastbone Skeletal Mage or Spirit Mender active, your magic and stamina recovery is increased by 200. So as you see, our recovery is 1.2k, but then while the skeleton is out, it goes up to 1.524. So this does help with our recovery. That's kind of why we have it here. The reason why I have this on my front bar, most of the time, you're going to run this on your back bar. I'm trying to, like I've said it many times, I'm bad about making sure I get the skills leveled up that I need leveled up. And this has been on my back bar. So, as you can see, the skills on my back bar are not fully leveled. They're getting there, but not fully leveled. So, I've put it to my front bar to try to get to max rank. But, also, I have it here just for the extra crit here. This gives us 40% crit while they're under 25% health. So we'll basically have 89.9% crit pretty much. So it is good to have on the front bar. But you can also run that on your back bar, run this on your front bar. But keep in mind, right now this lasts for 16 seconds, so it is kind of a weird. When all these last for 10, 13, it does kind of become a weird ability there because it's going to fall off 3 seconds right after. So to keep the rotation more static, I've just put it on the front bar. So now, Mystic Siphons. Well, I will say this though. After everything's said and done, I will move Degeneration to my front bar and put Skeleton Arcanist on the back bar after everything's leveled up. So, but right now, Mystic Siphon violently drains the last spark of life from a corpse, dealing 18.1k shock damage over 12 seconds to all enemies around the corpse and between you and the corpse. This portion of this ability scales off your highest offensive stat. You also restore 1.2k Magicka over 12 seconds while siphoning the corpse while slotted. Your damage done is increased by 3%. So, we have this slotted on both bars due to the fact that we want that extra 3% damage all the time. Now, if you don't care about the extra damage being on your front bar or your back bar, you can have it on either bar. It's up to you, because it does do a lot of damage. Uh, it does do a lot of damage at 17.2, but it also restores Magicka. But we have it slotted, so if you wanted to, if you have to use your shield, you can replace Mystic Siphon on your back bar with that. Me, I tend to replace Degeneration with my shield due to the fact that if I need a shield, more likely I'm using my spell power pots anyways because I'm doing something major. So that's probably why Degeneration hasn't fully leveled yet. But if I'm just going through normals and basic regular dailies and things like that, I'm using Degeneration. I don't really need a shield. So, but yeah, Mystic Siphon is good to have it on both bars. That's kind of it. Inner Light, we're using it for the second. While slot, your max magic is increased by 5%. You gain Major Prophecy, increasing your spell critical rating by 2.1. That's kind of all there is to it. Glacial Colossus. Unleash a frostbitten Colossus to pulverize enemies in the area. The Colossus smashes the ground 3 times over 3 seconds, dealing 10.4k frost damage. With each smash, the final smash stuns all enemies hit for 3.7 seconds. Dealing damage also applies major vulnerability to any enemy hit for 8 seconds, increasing their damage taken by 30%. Enemies hit cannot be affected again for 20 seconds, which is absolutely fine. Now, this is strong. Major vulnerability is absolutely a thing of beauty. This is what makes Necros so strong, because no other class gives major vulnerability. The Wardens have minor vulnerability with their Swarm, but that is it as far as I know. I don't think no other class does this. So this is absolutely insane, and it is worth having at all times. And if you can communicate with your group, it is really good to sync up with your allies' ult. Well, it's their Destro ult, Meteor, Ballista, Incap, whatever it may be. This is really good. So I run it on both bars because I never not want to cast this. So I don't want to accidentally cast the Destro ult. So I want to make sure that I am using this ult. And I have done that before. I have accidentally used the Destro ult because I lagged up a little bit and didn't bar swap. And boy, did I get a talking to. But either way, blockade fire. Slam your staff down to create a flame barrier in front of you, dealing 1.2k flame damage to enemies in the target area every 1 second. Burning enemies take 20% more damage from this ability. Blockade of fire is basically what gets your Maelstrom weapon going. While they're in this, any enemy you light attack, they'll take more damage. So this is the ability that helps with that's what makes your Maelstrom weapon so strong. So as long as they're in here and you're light attacking, let's see. We'll go with the main one here. My light attacks 7.2, 7.2, 3.8, I think 4.1. Yeah, 3.8. All right, there was the hand. So as long as they're in this, 5.4, 10.9, 5.7. So 3.8 to 5.7. See, it comes in handy a lot. So it definitely makes a difference. So Maelstrom, definitely go out and get your Maelstrom weapon. It definitely improves your DPS quite a bit. So at least by 3k. at least. So, Avid Boneyard. Desecrate the ground at the target location, dealing 13.8k frost damage over 10 seconds. Consumes a corpse on cast to deal 50% more damage. You or an ally standing in the graveyard can activate the Grave Robber synergy, dealing 12k frost damage to enemies in the area to help healing you for the damage done. I was originally using the other morph for this, um, but I kind of like the heal. The heal is relatively nice because you don't really have any other healing here in your kit unless you replace an ability. So this little extra heal and the fact that I can pop the synergy myself, I switched over to this, and I'm finding myself having a lot easier time just because I can get that extra heal. So now degeneration, bind an enemy with chaotic magic dealing 14.4k magic damage over 10 seconds. SX magic spills out from the granting you major sorcery, increasing your spell damage by 20% for 20 seconds. So this means we can use trash pods because we have inner light here for major prophecy on the front bar, and this is giving us major sorcery. So throughout the dungeons and stuff like that, we don't have to use essence of spell power, so we can save our more expensive pods for the harder content. So, but like I said, throughout most content, I end up, if I have to use a shield, which is Harness Magicka, or yeah, Harness Magicka, or whichever one's the shield from the light armor one, whichever morph you take, replace degeneration with it. And I'm using spellfire pots because more likely if I need a shield, I'm using my spellfire pots to begin with. So, Mystic Siphon both, or I will say this: if you want to keep degeneration and keep using your trash pots, you can replace Mystic Siphon on your back bar. Your damage is going to go down, but at least you can save some gold or not have to worry about having those really good pots. So, and then Barb Trap. When trigger the trap, we're more or less using it from the Minor Force for 10 seconds. This only lasts for 12 seconds right now, but at full rank, this will last for 16 seconds. As a magic user, I prefer the channeled acceleration for the Magicka skill line. You get that by starting the quest in Somerset and doing some small tedious things. They're not as tedious as Mage's line, but it is worth getting. But Barb Trapped is not. You get it from the Fighters Guild. I think you get it at rank 8. Ooh, excuse me. You get it at rank 8, but in the end, it is. I like the Sigil acceleration one, or the channeled acceleration from the Sigil line. All you gotta do is rank it up to level 4. It time wise, if you go in there and you start the quest, you will get it quicker than you will the Fighters Guild. Fighters Guild, you gotta get to the rank 8, so you've got to kill a ton of undead zombies, whatever, Daedra. And that will take a lot longer than it will to just do a couple quests and then just run around closing portals. So, either one though, you can go with either one, and it won't hurt nothing. And then we have Glacius Colossus again on our back bar. If you're more safe with your rotation, you can definitely use the Destro Rage Ultimate Fire Rage. Um, me, uh, I'm not, so I use it on both bars. Plus, when you get more than that execute phase, or you get that enemy under 25% health, it is really good to have the Glacius Colossus on the back bar, just to give us an extra 30% crit here. So, because we got Avid Boneyard, Mystic Siphon, and Glacius Colossus. So even when we bar swap to make sure we have this down, we're still getting that, because we're going to spam Crushing Shock when we get to that point. So that is going to be our main spammable. Okay, so fully buffed. As you can see, alright, let everything go down. This is our base stats. So, yeah, but buffing up completely, we are at 3k spell damage, 1.7k magic recovery. Not bad. Works out pretty well. So, now, let the skeleton go away. Elemental Catalyst, you can see it proc pretty easily. You'll see the circle around them. That's all there is to it. You'll see the procs down there on your bar. It goes off. Now, even if you don't use Force Pulse at the time, that'll trigger the fire one. This will trigger the ice. And then, of course, well, We need Mystic Siphon here, so we need a corpse over there. So Mystic Siphon will trigger that. So either way, it's not just Force Pulse. You have a ton of abilities that will keep this proc every 3 seconds. And if you see it there, you see it up on them, and then underneath on our bar, they look very identical, is the procs from Elemental Succession. So the ones that are proccing on the skeleton or on the target is Elemental Catalyst, and the ones proccing on our bar is Elemental Succession. It's a little weird to say that, but yes. So Catalyst will show up over the target or the enemy, and Succession will show up on your bars. So keep that in mind. They do look identical, but it's exactly the same thing. Now, for the rotation, it is pretty straightforward. It is pretty easy. You're going to Corpse, Barb Trap, Degeneration, Boneyard, Wall of Elements, Boneyard, Mystic Siphon, and then here you can drop Glacius Colossus if you wanted to. And then just, you'll be able to fire off about 3 Crushing Shocks, Bar Swap, and then just repeat. Barb Trap, Degeneration, Avid Boneyard, Wall of Elements, Bone Stock, uh, Mystic Siphon, and then you'll have to bring him back up on the second rotation. And then you just go back into Crushing Shock. Pretty straightforward. And I love seeing that big hand come up. So, and then as you can see, with 6.4 proc just on Force Pulse alone. 5.3, so 4.9. So it works out pretty well. Let's go ahead and just burn this thing down. As long as you keep generation up, you're going to be just fine. On. Well, I'm out of Magicka. I guess I should have been light attacking and stuff. Now, so like I said, it's really easy. Barb Trap, Degeneration, Boneyard, Elements. Of course, you'll start with Blast Bones. So at this point, Blast Bones, Mystic Siphon, Crushing Shock. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward. It's pretty static. You don't have to do a whole lot of bar swapping. Like if you have Arcanist on the back bar, you will. Um, but I love these sets. I'm really enjoying them. I think they're both made to synergize really well with one another, and I think they work great together, especially on a Necromancer that does all 3 abilities, whether you're using Crushing Shock or not. I just think it pairs really well, because just on our back bar alone, shock damage, frost damage, flame damage. So, and even without Mystic Siphon, this thing right here does shock damage. So, your Arcanist, flame damage, and then the skull would be flame damage, but I like Crushing Shock. It just, if you prefer the skull, Ricochet Skull, go for it. It's up to you. You know, it's your build. Do what you want with it. But this is just what I use. It's the rotation I use. Um, for the most part, I'm hitting between 36 to 38 average. So, it's not the strongest, but it is pretty fun. So, let me know if you're loving these new sets, if you love the new dungeon, or how you just love the Necro this patch. So, as always, until next time, take care.